Hey, Marcelle.
Hi, Betsy. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? Welcome.
Yes, gosh, it's been many years since I've been able to see and hear your voice, other than on your podcast, I guess. But
Yes.
yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. And I'm really excited to share your journey and what you're doing and your insight
Thank
with
you.
my listeners because it's just been a joy to follow you and to see what you're doing with
Thank you
FeelLinks
so
and
much.
everything like that.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a joy to be putting stuff out in the world, as you know, that can just be supportive and maybe help somebody out there. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
Okay, well, start off. Will you tell us? Just tell us what you're doing
Mhm.
about FeelLinks. Yeah, maybe how it got started, kind of just that whole kind of a general, and then we'll kind of dive deeper into
Sure.
things.
So I guess what I can say is going back, as a child, I think what we come to in our life, typically we can reflect back and think of times when we were younger that maybe we would have seen ourselves in these shoes. And, when I was a kid growing up, I had my brother and my mom, and we had a great little family and lots of love and lots of care. We grew up in a really small little town, and not always a place that we felt like we fit in for just a whole host of different reasons. Whether it be in a social manner or a financial manner or whatever that was. But looking back to that in my life and looking where I am today, I can say that it made a huge impression on me growing up, where I did, how I did to become what I want to say as just an educator of lots of things. Um, we had our great days and we had our hard days as a family, just like many of us do. Um, but I did know as I was growing up that I really wanted to get into education. And, I got to be a teacher. I got to actually be a teacher back in the place I grew up, which was really neat for me because I think there were so many things that I thought were, but that's because you're a kid and you're sort of trying to fit in and figure out who you are and what is happening. To really realizing that there were a lot more things going on in the background of the education world that I had grown up in.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really neat to head back there. I got to be a kindergarten teacher, taught there for just under 10 years before having my own children. And, when you become a parent, there are things that you reflect back on the parents that you had growing up, and you think of all the things that maybe you would like to do and the things that you also don't want to do, right?
Right. Yep.
And I also think we've come a long ways in terms of things that we know now when it comes to, say, our mental health or how we pay attention to our children. And so, as I was starting to, nurture my own children, bring up two kids of my own, which are now tween and teens, um, I decided that after teaching and sort of trying that stay at home mom life, that I really wanted to create something hands on for kids. After, knowing that when I was teaching, there weren't a lot of like tools out there that I could use in my classroom. So it was a lot of like creativeness that I had to utilize
Mm-hmm.
with my kindergartners. And I actually ended up teaching preschool as well for my son. But you know, kids learn through play and kids learn through that is kind of the language, I think, of
Yeah,
childhood.
for
And
sure.
so I created feelings, which are really right now there are free like things that you can find on my website. But what I also do is I've also created these hands-on emotion like plush dolls. They're two-sided. They have bright colors. They have these, a little emotive faces, and a journal that goes along with them for kids to be able to draw pictures or use dictation with an adult or write themselves in, because journaling is just such an important piece. And as a teacher, I use journaling every morning with my kids, and
Mm-hmm.
then found my own kids oh my goodness, like how many different journals did we get started
Yes.
on? So also just knowing the importance of what it feels like to get those feelings out. And then my daughter and I also have written a book together called Field Trip. And it's really all about this journey through ordinary emotions. So those are the pieces that have sort of been the hands-on tools that I created through FeelLinks. But my why really comes back to um, what do we know now is so important in the world of growing up for our children. And it really comes back to me to this piece of emotional intelligence, of really knowing how we feel and being able to talk about that with caring adults as a child. So that's really the background. And like I said, um, going back to being a child and just knowing that, gosh, I think my mom would have loved tools like these.
Yes.
And just knowing that working on how we can sort of affect um, the kids that are growing up in a really different world than we were growing up in, even as just this next generation.
Yeah. Well, and I think, because I was a teacher too, and just being a parent and a teacher, we have these desires and, things that we want to provide for our children. And yeah, when we don't have the resources or we're so overwhelmed with everything else that needs to be done, and it's not just, it's something that we would have to create ourselves that can, yeah, just like you're saying with in kindergarten and things like that, that can be super overwhelming. But that now you've created that. I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful. I love it. And with your daughter too.
Yes. The
That's
the the little book that we wrote together, it's been really fun because experiencing that with my own child is such a such a special, unique thing. I mean, and but moreover, when she's reading in a classroom with me and these little kiddos are looking at her like, you're a published author. And she's now 13, but she was 12 when we actually released the book. And it is so cool to just see how these children react to her. And they just think, wow, maybe someday I can. And that to me is just like the most beautiful thing to see. So yeah, it's been really joyful. And also watching my daughter be very like convicted in the way that she wanted certain things for the book was really neat for me to see because I might help her with homework or support her in taking her to her sporting activities, but really working and collaborating that way with your child. I mean, I really hadn't had that experience with her, and knowing that I was more, I'm not really sure, and she was sure. I was like, okay, then that's that is what the illustrations will look like, and that is the wording, and that's amazing.
yeah,
So, just seeing the strength in her was a really neat thing through writing this together.
that's awesome. And what a good example. I think so often we're kind of conditioned out of kind of leading with our gut or our intuition. And
Mhm.
to watch her in her young self, or maybe she hasn't been conditioned, to
Right.
think twice about something. She knows this is what she wants, and to be
Yeah.
able to move forward with that, that's amazing. What a
Right.
gift. I remember on Instagram watching you guys open your box for the first time with the books in it. Oh,
Ah,
that
yeah,
was that
that
was
was a really neat thing to be able to do, especially because, when I first created sort of these tools, my kids were at home with me. It was
yes.
during COVID shutdown and so it was really neat that they were sort of by my side while I was really getting into doing this and sort of my why behind that. And then just to see the move forward and next step to be with her was again just really a really special thing to get to do. Um, and now just, reading to different school age kiddos and things together, going into our local bookshops and getting to do that together.
Mhm.
Um, a 13-year-old female at this point in time, there's a lot of things going on for them in their minds and in their hearts and in their, bodies and things. And, she has her moments of the shyness and the, not quite sure. And um, we talk about those things afterwards. And I think that those are, again, important conversations that we're facing feelings with our kids.
Yeah.
And so it does get to bring up those conversations on our rides back, home after we have these, or um, yeah, it just lends itself to good conversations about what it feels like to get in front of a group, or what it feels like to do something for the first time.
Hmm.
And those are the kinds of conversations as parents that I think we really need to continue to have. And a lot of times, and I think you would agree with this, it's a lot of more listening at this age, and it's a lot um, of trying to stay quiet when our kids are ready to talk.
Yeah.
So I do find that if we're driving in the car and we can get going on something, that there is sometimes more of that chit chat that is important, and it is deep, and it is the stuff where, especially at these kids' ages and the things that they have faced and will face in their lifetime, that we are having conversations now, and we're doing a lot of listening to our kids, and also lending them language on how they
Yes.
express what's happening and how they're feeling,
Yeah.
which is sort of the building blocks of what I have created so that we can work on those things as we get older.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go a little bit deeper in what you do provide your plush, like emoji type,
Yeah.
or they're with emotions,
Mhm.
and also your book. Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more about, like you said, how does it lend
Mhm.
to starting these conversations and giving
Yeah.
ourselves and our
Mhm.
children and those we love language to use, because I
Yeah.
think it is so powerful.
So, I want to start really quick, I think, as adults, because I find that the one thing that we have to remember is that, we are the models. So as adults, it is important that not only do we take that time for ourselves to understand how we are feeling, but that we're modeling that language. I just had a very difficult but beautiful experience putting on a bereavement retreat for 7 mothers with a nonprofit that I work with. Um, One thing I started out with these moms, they got journals, and we started with a feelings wheel. And this wheel gave them language that they didn't even know.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can all, I won't say all, many of us can reflect back at the ages that we are now as adults, that these feeling words or paying attention to how we are feeling was not a part of our growing up. So this is something that many of us have had to learn, or maybe we haven't even quite decided that it's time to learn it. But even what are these emotional vocabulary words? What do they mean? And how do I actually feel? And how do I figure out how I feel? And so I say this because until we can do that for ourselves as a parent or a teacher or someone in a child's life, then we can start modeling what that's like for our children. So, what I did in this, in the journal, and then the book that we wrote together, and sort of how the dolls pair with that, is I call it words to grow on. And really, what it is there's a sad doll, and it's gray, and it has, the sad looking face and the sad looking eyes, and it lends itself to feeling sad. But inside the journal, there's words to grow on. So then it's words like hurt or grief, right? So we need to entertain this idea of like those emotions that we have or our children are having, they don't need to be the sad, mad, glad, right?
Mm.
It can be that. But what we need to know is there are way deeper and other feelings that we are needing to consider, that we might be feeling, that we need to be using this language. And so these pieces for the children are ways to introduce those words so that we can understand them a little bit better, so that when our kids are feeling those things, it's not necessarily, I am feeling happy. Maybe they're feeling grateful and they want to talk about why. Or maybe they are experiencing grief and they have, a friend has moved away. And that is a deeper, deeper sadness than
Mhm.
feeling sad because I didn't get dessert tonight.
Right.
Maybe they're feeling grief that they didn't get dessert, but that is a little different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's about us as adults being able to also know and understand how we are feeling and modeling using those words. Even if you have very young children, there is nothing
Yeah.
wrong with using vocabulary that at that time feels over their head. But remember, as we are doing what we're doing, they are learning from us. They are always looking, listening, parroting sometimes, what we are doing and saying. And so we are the models. And so the creation of this really comes about to say, it's not about setting this over to your kiddo and saying, use it. Or I have a lot of classroom teachers that have these tools as well and just setting it down. It's about supporting them. It's about going through it together and taking the time. And those are the things as parents, I know sometimes we just don't feel like we have the time.
Yeah. Yep.
But it is important. And some people call them the soft skills of life, but I really feel like they are the building blocks to all of the other skills that we are trying to support and instill in our children,
Yeah.
right? If we are understanding how we are feeling or how someone else is feeling, teamwork's going to go a lot better,
Right.
right? A
Yeah.
friendship's going to be a lot healthier if we can pay attention to how our friend is feeling. So these are all those emotional intelligence building blocks to all the things, going to school, holding relationships, being a great partner to someone, working together, um, even, thinking about customer service while you're at work. Like, how are you noticing the person coming toward you? What are you doing to interpret that? These are all such important life skills
Hmm.
that we need to be focusing on.
Yeah. And that we actually do have time for it. And as we do make the time, like you're saying, it's going to lend to more opportunities and less time that we're spending on, um, like damage control or whatever later on, for lack of a better term.
Yes,
And just, yeah,
absolutely.
our overall well-being. I feel like, this is something that's been said a lot, but and I'm grateful that it's so much more of the norm now, but mental health is just as important as our physical health. I talk to parents all the time and say, if your child had a broken leg, what would you do something about it?
Right,
Or we
right.
do things also to prevent, illness, to prevent accidents, things like that, and same sorts of things like what you're talking about here. I
Yeah,
love
so
that.
giving them helping them with the language and the tools of being able to understand
Yeah.
how they're feeling gives us better supportiveness to them as their caretakers. Like, if
Mhm.
we can understand how they're feeling, then we could do better by what their needs are.
Yeah.
And mental health also does specifically affect our physical health,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So, I mean,
It's all,
it's all connected and
yeah.
it's all together. One of the things that I wanted to mention too, on the little plush dolls and also throughout the book, um, and in the journal, there are these little touch spots on the head, heart, and belly. And the reason that I've done that, so there's a little star, a little heart, and a little swirl on the belly, because what we try to do, especially with children, younger children, and then as they're growing they're seeing it even more, is an understanding of like what's happening inside of me when I'm feeling these emotions. So whether it's an excitement or feeling thrilled, or a gratitude, a grateful feeling, or grief, what are those feeling like? What does anxiety feel like? What does
Mhm.
stress feel like in my body?
Yeah.
And those come with what's happening to my heart, what's happening inside my head. Maybe I'm feeling a headache or a pounding or a lightness. And
Mhm.
what's happening in my tummy? I mean, think about what anxiety feels like for you. If you feel anxiety sometimes, like, what does that feel like for you? What do you think that feels like for a 5-year-old? They don't always know. And so we're also paying attention to what those emotions are and how they are affecting us, because that's a really important piece of this too, because then we start talking about, what do I do with this?
Mhm.
Right. So, what are those strategies to help my body if my tummy's hurting because of anxiety, or my heart is racing because I'm, feeling very nervous about something, or I'm feeling stressed and so I'm getting a headache or whatever it is. But those are the things too for our kids and us as adults, but for our children to learn and understand what's happening inside of them when these feelings come on. We're all human. We have emotions. And the more that we can support through these things, then the more they're able to notice how important their mental health is for their physical health and for, these parts of life, relationships and friendships and those sorts of things, and being able to focus and be at school. And
Yeah.
um, we have to feel we have to feel well for those things. It's hard to focus or be at school if we're not, at our best. And I think that being able to then express to someone that does care for us is a really great way for us to pay attention to that.
Yeah, for sure. And just like everything that we've learned about understanding kind of our emotions and our thoughts and our feelings, being able to talk about it and even in essence, move it, kind of
Mhm.
create movement with it, that energy and everything like that, that helps. I mean, that physically helps us rather than holding it in or suppressing it, pushing it away, things like that. That usually compounds it. But if we're
Mhm.
able, like you said, to talk about it and find support and connection
Yes.
with someone, oh my word, that's so powerful. So powerful.
Well, and I think too, we have to remember that we hopefully as a parent, right, we are that for our children.
Right.
But it's also really cool to say, like, who else do you have that you would that you feel safe with and trust in? And it could be a second parent, it could be a grandparent, it could be a teacher,
Yeah.
it could be a family friend. Like, it is really great to know that there is also someone, maybe besides you, that your child has that with. And if they can't name someone, that's also okay. But knowing that that strong adult relationship is truly, it is the most important thing for our kiddos to have with somebody.
Mhm.
So one is great, but it is also really nice if there's someone, it could be even, an older sibling to them or even their sibling. But I think that that adult child piece where they have someone to trust in, hopefully there's someone at school. So when they're not at home with you, there is someone there that they can connect with.
Mhm.
Um, and if you don't have that, help them. Maybe you want to try to find that with them. I did that with my daughter. She has a particular teacher that she had last year that, when you're in middle school and you're bopping around to all your classes, like, it is a little bit harder than when you're in elementary and you've got a teacher all day long that you feel hopefully, comfortable with talking to about something going on, or maybe you've had a really rough start to the day and you're able to open up and share that with them as a student. But in middle school, things are really quick. It's like you're in, you're out, you're on to the next. But she found this one science teacher and they just had this amazing bond. And she got her again for eighth grade, which
Oh,
is so
wow.
amazing. And she did just happen to reach out to me and say, hey, she's been a little quiet. Or is there something going on? I'm going to pull her aside. And she did. This was just this week. She pulled her aside. They had a great conversation. And that was that. But to me, knowing that there's someone else there, I love that. And I
Mhm.
love that this teacher recognized, like, "Huh, she's been a little bit quieter in class. Wonder if
Right.
something's up."
Yeah.
And just the ability to know for myself as a parent that there is someone there that is watching. I love that. I feel really fortunate for that. So yeah, I
That is
think those relationships are really important for our kids to have at any age.
well, and I love how you've branched this out where you're sharing it with parents, with adults, but also taking kind of specific focus to schools
Mm.
and kind of uh, maybe bigger arenas, just where, like you said, we can have that connection at home, but if we can have connections wherever we are, gosh, what what a,
Right?
beautiful world that would be. So tell me,
Yes.
what does it look like? Like, what when
Yeah.
you go and visit a school, or, how does that look?
Yeah. So a lot of my schools that have feelings, they typically use the dolls for like morning check-in time with the kids. So some fun ideas that I've seen, I actually did this at another school, but recently a school sent me, they have like a little jar in the morning and the kids put in the color of
Um,
bead that correlates to the doll. And so then they can kind of see like all the colors in the jar of
Oh,
like, wow, there's a lot of, mix of emotions here. So there
mhm,
happens to be 8 colors of the feelings. So they use those. And then using like a basket of the dolls and the kids go around and they pull out, we don't always just have one feeling, we can have a
oh,
mix of
yes,
emotions. So
yes.
then they've got, all of them out and they're telling how they're feeling. And, what a great way to set the tone for the day.
Mhm,
Also had these put in sort of, you know, people have different words, but like a reset space or a calming space of some sort
mhm.
within a classroom. I try really hard to let educators know that this is really supposed to be inside of a classroom. They're not really go out in the hallway and find your dolls, they're
Right,
they're really
yes.
made for the support. So it could be depending on the age that there's also an adult that can go into the space with a child, or maybe they need it alone at first. Some of them will draw and write inside of their journals. So the journals are being used for like morning time as well, like a morning activity. Um, and then also using the dolls for buddy breathing. So putting those dolls on their bellies and like being able to breathe with them. They're also super squishable. And so a really good tool for squeezing and feedback. And
Mhm.
some kids just like carrying them around and they feel like they're their little buddies. So I
Yeah.
think that's, also a great way. So, I mean, they're super cute. I have, adults put them on their desk even to remind
Yes,
themselves
yes.
at work, like, "It's okay to have all these, but, like, how am I gonna show my emotions today?"
Mhm.
Or, I've even had, kids, like, carrying 'em around the classroom in their little bags because they kind of feel like they're theirs that day, so they're taking care of them.
Oh.
But they're a great check-in tool and they're great for pulling kids, whether it be one-on-one or if there's a situation in a classroom or in any childcare space where they can use the dolls to sort of show each other how they're feeling too, because not all kids want to talk. Not all kids necessarily actually have the ability for like verbally speaking. And so these are a great way too for showing um, and being able to tell without necessarily verbally speaking. So they have really come in handy as well for therapists in different ways as well, just to be able to utilize those with kids in small groups or one-on-one. But yeah, so that's a great way. And then the book that we have written has the dolls on the pages, so everything kind of goes with it. So the kids like picking them up and showing how they match,
Mhm.
and then just using them to talk about, like I said, the head, the heart, the belly, how are we feeling, and then the journals have been a really great way actually for teachers to speak with parents about
Mhm.
how children are feeling.
Oh, yeah.
So a great tool for teachers during a conference time or to be able to call a parent in and say, I've noticed this pattern of how the child's feeling. Let's talk about this. Let's see how we can support. Um, Typically, the journals feel very sacred to those kiddos. And so they will put their true selves in them. And so it is a special place for them to do that. But it has been really supportive in that way too. So,
Oh, that's amazing. And so exciting. I love that. And just how it's encouraging kind of us as adults wherever, and we're supporting children to work together.
yeah,
And then
I would say
also,
the number one feedback for me that sits with me all the time is a parent, a mother who told me that using these tools has changed the way that she has parented. She has given much more of the time that she felt like she wasn't necessarily having,
mhm,
where she realized she did have the time to go through and really sit with her child and understand where he was feeling and why. And now he's able to do these things sort of more independently,
yeah,
which is also really great, or speaking, coming to her and talking to her on his own. um, so just that in of itself felt like a major win, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's what we're hoping for in our kiddos, is to be able to express themselves appropriately, and know that as a parent that there are tools, you have created as well, that there are tools out there for our kids so that we know how to better support them, because we don't all have time to create.
yeah,
So we've done some of that
exactly.
for them,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
what would you suggest, with a parent or a teacher that, is listening and just like me is like, "What? This is amazing." And, like that mother said, "I want to be on the other side. I'm ready to, invest some time in this." Um, where would you suggest they start? Because you said you have, a lot of resources.
Yeah. So on my website, I have free resources because, as you and I both have talked, education and understanding is just so important. And so I write, I would say once to twice a week, I put up an article that I've written, that gives information about steps we can take to, whether it's repair with our children, or it's trying to be a better listener with our children, ways to do that. So, just really some of that parent education, or teacher education behind how we can do those things. What sort of steps, like, what are the 5 takeaways of how to do this?
Mhm, yeah,
What are the 2 takeaways on how to do this? So I'm really all about like the strategies and um, being able to know like how to do something.
yeah,
So short articles, I've got printables that are, different breathing exercises, different ways to calm our minds and bodies, just ways that we can start infusing those. I am very visual. I have things even on my kids' walls still.
yeah,
We have lists on what helped them calm. So things like out is a great way
yeah,
to like talk to them about what they are and put them up somewhere visible. So I do have those things, including of like feelings wheels that are appropriate for younger kids, on my website. And then also the hands-on tools and products that I've created are on there as well. Um, but I really think that if we create a small space, it doesn't need to be a whole room, but like create a space that feels safe and calm, and whatever that is, less is more. Like, we don't have to overdo the fidgets or the tangible, touchable items.
mhm,
It could be a safe spot with a pillow and some books and some soft music. I mean, there's lots of ways, but the more that we can get our child to tell us, like, what are the things that help calm you, or what are the things you like when you're feeling sad, then we can learn from them,
yeah,
because it's not going to always be what we do.
right,
Although us going out and taking a walk and doing the things we do definitely models for them ways that can help.
mhm,
I think having like a special spot for our kids, especially our younger kiddos, that, feels, and I say that because I think our older kids typically will find their bedrooms maybe
yeah, Yeah.
or
Hmm.
or maybe like the kitchen area, but like they kind of can figure out where their space
Right.
might be
Yeah.
because they've now practiced for so many years. But I think with our younger kids, if we can help kind of create that and cultivate that special spot, that's a really great place to start. And I do want to say, like, it is never too late. It is not too late for us. I
Right.
mean, we are learning the vocabulary. We are learning how to calm ourselves. We're learning that self care is so important. I mean, these are all new ish to us too, right? The research keeps telling us
Right.
more about it. And
Right.
so we're learning. And then it's important that we take that education and plant that in our parenting or in our teaching in our classroom. And, even as parents who know all of this, don't by any means think I will speak for myself that I have not raised my voice
Oh yeah.
or done something that I should, feel as a parent, ooh, I shouldn't have done that. But it is never too late to, you know, use repair to teach our children
Right.
that we're human and we make those same mistakes that we are sorry for, so yeah, I think starting small and thinking about what might be a way to start opening those feelings conversations with our kids is a great place to start. And just knowing the importance of it, I think will push us to realizing like there is time.
Yeah. That's awesome. Tell me about Boxed Up. Is that something that's ongoing?
Yeah, so Boxed Up Project is this. So I am very involved with an organization called the Ladybug House, and my one of my very closest friends' son was sick with neuroblastoma cancer, and he just passed away in June. And so when he was sick, they don't live by us anymore. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was find an organization that I could give my time to that really was supporting families and children going through what my little buddy was going through and what his family is grieving for now. And so, because of Ladybug House, who is palliative and hospice care for children, but also for the families that are facing these very difficult times. Um, I got really involved with like child life services and grief counseling and those sorts of things. And so, sort of getting into that world, I found Boxed Up Project. And this is a group of incredible young high school and just graduated high school youth that started a nonprofit that makes these boxes, and they go out to these different organizations that support families and children with childhood cancer and other grief and loss.
Mm.
And they send these boxes out and they have tools inside, like whether they're, coloring books and pencils and pens and things. And so I have just sent out to Boxed Up Project some journals and some the books and dolls so that these can go into the boxes that they're sending. Now they are sending 300 boxes out, which is amazing. And they're sending to a bunch of different organizations. So right now we are not quite to that number yet. But I really feel strongly that the more that we can, spread our own kindness and bring joy to those that are struggling in ways that maybe we have, or maybe someday we will, and we hope that people will be there for us. I just really wanted to do what I could. And so this has been, again, like a very like personal piece of my why in who I find to sort of create these donations to. So we did one recently for Seattle Children's Hospital
Mm.
under the same. And in fact, our donations went in right the week after our little buddy passed away. And so it was just a really beautiful thing to be able to go in there where he was a few years back, when they did live here, to bring these and donate them under his memory. So, and backtracking a bit, when Uvalde had their horrible school situation there, we were able to also, with my FeelLinks community, one-to-one, donated 168 of our sets down there. So just trying to find, those places in our world that we can help lift other people up during really tough circumstances. And these little sweet plush dolls and journals and places for kiddos to express themselves has been the right thing. So some of the things in our line of work now, that's not really work, but more our passions, that I think have grown into things that we didn't anticipate. Like, whether you thought you'd be doing this amazing podcast, before or not, like, I think that this world of finding people that want to do good and spread good, and support others in some way, is just sort of what I wanted to do with my time. So yeah, but I would check out Boxed Up Project. It's really cool that these youth have created this nonprofit.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely link that like in our show notes, along with all your information too. So
Thank you.
that people can check that out, but then also follow you for, is this the first time that you've done Boxed Up, or do I feel like I've seen it? It's the first.
Yeah, no, this is the first time that I am doing this. So like I said, the other couple of, pieces were, again, mostly going back to the just looking at the loss and the
Right.
grief,
Yeah.
and knowing that those are some of the toughest feelings that, especially coming out of these lives of children that are experiencing this. So yeah, it definitely was a great thing that I came across, finding them and connecting with them, and just really cool that these, one child, her own lost story has turned into this nonprofit. So we hope to continue to be able to support and help them along the way. And but yeah, so the Ladybug House is really they're here in the Seattle area, and they're the ones that we put on the bereavement retreat for these mothers. Um, that nonprofit is local, and again, I really wanted to find something where I felt like I was being supportive to families that were going through the same thing that my friend's family was going through. But yeah, I mean, just amazing to see just the goodness in people. It is out there, and finding our passions and being able to lift other people up in their toughest times, I think, is like a really, it helps us too, right? It brings me joy that I can go out and I do have the time to help others that are going through some really tough stuff. And I've been the person going through tough stuff too. We've all experienced what we've experienced in our own lives. And when our time comes to be able to support others, then I think it's great that we can do that. And, if you're in a tough time right now, I hope that you have people, I mean, it's important. And I know, like, I keep reading, like, loneliness seems to be like the number one feeling right now of like even our teenagers. And, sometimes that's their perception and sometimes it's the reality. And so I would just encourage that if you have those people in your life, like, reach out. Like, if it's someone you haven't reached out to, it's okay. It's okay now. It's never too long, and it's never too late to wait. But we don't always know what people are are dealing with. And yeah, just be good. That's
Well,
what,
and I and I think that, you know, connection and communication, like you've been talking about this whole time, are really, really powerful.
yes, definitely.
And yeah, and we don't need um, you know, anything like you said, creating just a small space, you know, we don't need anything fancy or over the top. Same thing when we're
Yep.
trying to connect with other people or help or serve other people. It doesn't need to be anything grand, or
Nope.
it just needs to come from us. And yeah,
Well, and I do think too, there's such huge power in connection. And I know as a parent, when I can talk to other parents who are going through or have gone through similar things that might have felt tough as a parent, maybe your child is facing, you know, anxieties, and maybe you yourself don't know what that's like, right?
yeah,
But talking to another parent and knowing that there are other children, there are other people, there are other, and just that connection of finding those commonalities, I think really helps us as humans to know we're not the only one. And I think part of even going through this whole like time during the pandemic of like, we are in this together. And like, yes, we might be experiencing things very differently,
yeah,
but yes, we all experienced it.
yep,
And you know, kids came out of that. Some came out of it just, feeling like, okay, now I'm back to where I was. And others came out with a really tough time.
yeah,
But you're going to find people out there to connect with that have experienced things similarly. And I think that connection is so important for us.
yeah,
I mean, especially as caretakers, to know like there are other people out there that have children that have experienced, severe anxiety or have, you know, their perfectionism has caused so much stress or whatever it is. I think that that stuff is really important to talk about. And it doesn't need to be, there is no taboo. There is no, yeah, just we need to talk about it.
yeah. I love it. And I'm just grateful that we were able to reconnect and that we are kind of on, just like you said, we're on a similar mission but different. We've had different experiences, but yeah, but we are kind of moving towards that same goal. And I think so many people, including um, my listeners, are on that same path, and just super grateful for all that you're doing. And I love how your simple products do promote connection.
Yeah.
I love
Thank you.
that.
Thank
That's
you.
just really powerful, and I think are doing so much good. I'm so honored to be connected with you and to be following your journey. It's
You
been really nice.
too. You too. Yeah. Like when we started this out, it's like we have to take the things that we've experienced ourselves and what we may be experiencing right now. And, what can we put out there in the
Yep.
world to like, to educate, and also, like I just was saying, the commonalities and the connections, because we're human and we're going to have our tough times and we're going to have the good times, but all of it is out there to talk about, and
Yeah.
it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Well,
Oh,
thank you so much. I love
yes.
chatting with you.
Yes. Thank you, Marcel. I'm going to link everything
Great.
that we talked about. So if you're listening, just go to the show notes if you want to connect with Marcelle, and she's on Instagram, Facebook, and she's got her website. I will link all that, but it is FeelLinks. So but that will be in the show notes. And yeah, I'm just excited to see where you go, and I love the information that you put out in your posts and things like that. So just so
Thanks.
much. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you.